You're listening to the Sportageous podcast, where sport gets smarter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Sportageous podcast. We have a really awesome guest here today. He is the founder of a company called Wylas Timing. William Ferguson, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Suzanne.
How's it going?
I'm really well, stoked actually. Things are hectic and fun.
That's what we like to hear. So let's perhaps start off with a bit about you, your background and career, and how you made your way over to founding Wylas.
Sure. So I'm a software engineer by trade, and I've been doing it for, well, let's say a really long time. And we'd moved down to Melbourne, and then we always decided we were going to come back up when the kids were school age, so we did. And as soon as we joined the local school, there was a swimming pool with the school, and the kids joined up with the swim club, which was cool by me because I did it as a junior. You know, I swam for many years as a junior.
Right.
Wasn't really good, but loved it, and trained my heart out for no good effort or no good result in the end.
Sure.
But I loved it.
Yeah.
And when the kids joined the swim club, like every good parent, I put up my hand and I volunteered, you know, first as timekeeper and then as recorder and then finally as president. And under my stewardship, the club grew, but we had some problems with that growth. Club nights that were already finishing late, you know, now weren't finishing till after 11 at night, which is very late, especially for little kids. Everyone was getting a little bit grumpy with all of that, understandably. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, being the kind of nerdy type that I am, I sat down, analysed the problem, and realised it really came down to the manual way in which we were recording the times.
Right.
When the race starts, all of the timekeepers, you know, start their stopwatch, and as the swimmer comes into the end of the pool, they stop the stopwatch. They average it with their buddy next to them. They write it up on a board, and then someone comes along, writes down the times for the whole pool, and then someone else madly enters it into the computer. And if you get any disruption to that flow, then the whole meet blows out, and it becomes a really long-winded, stressful, you know, frustrating affair.
Right.
And I thought, this is really dumb. You know, we're in the age of computers. Why isn't this automated?
Sure.
And so I looked around for a solution, and sure enough, there were solutions out there. But when we got the quotes coming back, you know, we had quotes coming in at $30,000 just to replicate what we were doing manually.
Wow.
And, you know, for an amateur swim club, that was just so far over the money, it wasn't funny. Mm-hmm. So as a software engineer, I thought, well, what can I do? I'd already been doing some work in the mobile space. Google had anointed me as a developer expert because of the work I was doing in the Android and world. And I thought, well, I'll give it a go. I didn't really want to because I knew how much work was going to be involved, but I thought I'd give it a go. And in a couple of months, I put together a prototype, showed it to the club. Club loved it, and we decided to run with it for the season.
Sure.
Ended up being great. We halved how long the meets ran for, and it was fun because we could, because we were using, Android, apps running on Android phones.
Yeah.
It meant that everything got down. It's all software, which means we can add in a lot of extra functionality. Things like every timekeeper can see not only the state of the race, what race it is, when it's ready and everything like that, but also the name of the kid who's swimming in their lane, so they can congratulate by name as they get out of the pool. And we can turn any TV into a multi-lane display, so the kids can see their names, places, times all up there on the board. It's those kind of little extras that really, really make things sort of special. The kids absolutely love it, but for the parents, it's giving them half their night back every Friday night.
Right. So you basically looked at essentially a problem that was making it difficult for families to stay and have their kids continue to swim, and you came up with a technology that can now be used in multiple facets of swimming meets. Am I right to say that?
That's exactly correct. And it's all about, taking away the drudgery and, the pain, that frustration in running the meet, and, turning it back into a fun event again for, the whole family, for the parents as well as the kids.
And just before we touch a bit more on the technology, earlier on you mentioned that you moved back up from Melbourne. So where exactly are you and the company based now?
We're in Brisbane. So I'm a Brisbane boy, moved down to Melbourne for a few years and then came back. Always going to come back.
Yeah, Brisbane is absolutely lovely. Lived there for about 5 years myself. You've sort of touched on what Wylas Timing does, but in, I guess, layman terms, could you tell us how exactly the device works and what is required of it, or the app, and how do they come together, and how can people use them? Yeah,
sure. It's really a system of apps. So at the core of it, there's an application running on the laptop that does, all of the coordination for the devices. Mm-hmm. We've got a local Wi-Fi router that connects all of the devices together. So it connects, the laptop's connected to the router's connected to all the other devices. And when I say other devices, the timekeepers are using Android phones. So they can, we provide Android phones, or they can get their own, or they can pull one from out of their pocket and download our app off Google Play.
Sure.
And we've got our Trinity starter pistol, which again is networked into the system. And like I said before, we use HDMI, Android HDMI dongles to turn any TV into a multi-lane display. So if we start at the beginning of the night, the recorder on the laptop goes and loads in all of the meet, all of the races, all of the entries for that meet. And typically they'll be doing that directly from their meet manager. So it'll already have been sorted and seeded and everything like that in the meet manager. Yeah. And it's a simple matter, 2 or 3 clicks, and they just pull all the data across. And then they select the first race for the night. Sure. Click on a button to marshal it, and then all the devices come to life with all the details for that race. So the timekeepers will be able to see it's race 1, 100 metres freestyle, and who they've got swimming in their lane. The TVs will show all of the swimmers in all of the lanes, and the Trinity starting pistol has got a LED screen on the back, so it too will sort of show the details that, this is race 1, 100 metres freestyle. And the race is ready to start at that point. So once the starters, settled all the swimmers on the blocks, they fire the starting pistol. That sends the signal to all the other devices about when the race has started. All the devices are already synchronized together, so they're all working off the same clock. And the timekeepers will start to see the clock ticking over, as will all the spectators, because it'll show on the TVs.
Yep.
And when the kids get to the end of the pool, timekeepers use the volume rockers on the phones, so they've got a tactile feel to it, to stop the clock, and then times are instantly midpointed or averaged, and then put up onto the screens. End of the race, the recorder clicks on a button to finalise the race, and the results are immediately sent back over to the meet manager, and they can go and do the next race.
Right, so that's, I guess, how you significantly reduce the time frame for these swim meets.
That's right. There's no manual entry at any point, and you lose all of the human error at the start of the race, which is the big part. You've got human reaction time is 0.2 of a second, so you've immediately got a 0.2 of a second error using a manual stopwatch.
Yep.
The end of the race isn't too bad because they can judge them sort of coming into the end of the pool. Mm-hmm. It's still a little bit, not too bad. And then you lose any of the arithmetic error, doing the averaging or the transcription errors, and as soon as all the times are in, referee blows all clear. It's one click, and then you've finished that race, and you can immediately start the next race. So most of the clubs will start the swimmers over the top of the kids who are already in the pool, and it's not uncommon to waste 45 to 60 seconds in between each race when you're trying to coordinate all of the times. With this, you're just done instantly.
So you've touched a bit on how, this is beneficial to the management at the clubs and at the different swim meets. How does this benefit the swimmers?
Yeah. The swimmers obviously are getting more accurate results straight up. They're getting their results in a more timely manner because a lot of the times at the meets, unless someone has managed to write down what the swimmer's time is immediately, so a parent sitting up in the stands, getting it all down, it'll be lost. Whereas we can post all of this instantly now because the results are there straight away. We can post it into the cloud or wherever we need to do. And the other thing is, and this is particularly big for the little kids, seeing their name up in lights on the TVs has a huge impact.
So it is basically a means to keep them motivated and pushing on.
Yeah, and I love going along and watching, particularly that age group from about, 6 through to 10, where they're really ultra competitive little things.
Yeah.
And, they're racing their best mate in the lane next to them, and they get to the end of the pool, and they're both turning around, and it's just like, who won? It
does them a service as well, yeah.
Yeah, I love seeing kids happy like that. Yeah. That's what makes me happy, right? That's why I did this to make things work really, really well, and it's turned out to be every bit as good as what I wanted it to be.
Yeah, okay. Let's move on to what you talked about earlier, which was that initially when you hadn't even come up with this idea, but you noticed that the issue was there, you said that to purchase a sort of system similar to this would cost you about 30 grand. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right.
What do you do differently, and how does that impact the price for your product?
It's really, really simple. We use commodity hardware and we put all the smarts into the software, whereas our competitors are using proprietary hardware, and because of that, it becomes extremely expensive for them. And they don't get the flexibility that we do in an ability to upgrade things, and send them out worldwide overnight. So we regularly roll out updates to add in new features, new functionality, and because that's the way that software is, that's the benefit and value in software. When I'm talking about commodity hardware, we're talking about low-end Android phones because they've got an enormous amount of power in them, more than enough to do what we need them to do.
Right.
And same with the, we can turn any TV into a multi-lane display just by plugging in an Android HDMI dongle into the TV and, turning it into a big display. The competing kind of technology is, proprietary LED screens that are, heavy 1970s technology and really expensive.
Sure. So how much have you cut that $30,000 cost down to?
Well, we can cut it down to essentially nothing.
Right.
We've had clubs. We've had clubs who have gone and sourced all of the gear themselves, and then just purchased the software license off us. But typically, a club will spend about $3,200 in hardware, getting all of the gear that they need. Yeah. And so that's going to give them all the watches they need, the starting pistol, all that. The chargers, HDMI dongles, all of that, and they just unpack it, turn it on, and they can start, running with it.
Right. Okay. And then on top of that, they also have to buy the software license.
That's right. We charge a software license for for the system, and we only charge for however many months that they swim. For clubs that are swimming 6 months, then it's a $420 license. For clubs that are swimming 12 months, it's a $600 license.
Wow. Okay. So from $30,000 to, let's say, at the maximum under $4,000. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's right. And this is because we're in the 21st century now. We should be doing stuff like this.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I guess a segue from that, let's move on. Who your main customers are, and then your main competitors, if any, in the market. Yeah, but so let's start off with your customers.
So our customers, I originally set this out to support the amateur swim clubs, because that's where I came from.
Yeah.
And so our customers are the clubs, but we've also got a lot of resonance with the schools, so particularly the private schools, and they tend to want a more complete system, so one that is fully autonomous, so includes touch pads at the end of the pool.
Right. Yeah.
And now we're shipping the world's first wireless touchpad, so no cables across the pool deck, just drop it into the end of the pool.
What is the purpose of the touchpad exactly?
Remember before I was talking about removing the error out of the time.
Sure.
And so for the timekeeper, we removed the large part of error at the start of the race.
Yep.
We've still got a small amount of error at the end of the race. You drop the touchpad in the end of the pool, and you lose that error at the end of the race as well.
Right. That's how you deal with the other side of that whole race, basically.
That's it. That's exactly right.
Okay. So you would still then say that majority of your customers are amateur clubs and schools.
Yeah,
schools
exactly.
In particular.
That's exactly right. While some want that full kit, the fully autonomous system, that adds a fair bit to the budget.
And do you have plans to sort of branch out to a more professional level, or do you not see that as an area of interest at this point in your business?
You mean as in stepping up to for meets at a regional, national level kind of thing?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we've shown that we've got the capability to do that already.
Yeah.
We just beat out Swiss Amiga Timing for Leeds University over in the UK.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So they were looking for a top-line system, and they chose us over Swiss.
Right. Okay. And I guess that's a good point to then ask you, which countries does your product now sell to besides, of course, Australia?
That's a long list now.
Well, you could sum it up, 5 or 6 of the top countries maybe that where you are selling a lot of your product.
Yeah, okay. The US would be the largest outside of Australia. Sure. But then the UK, Slovakia, Singapore, Kuwait.
Yeah, okay, right.
We're shipping to about, we've got clients in, I'm trying to remember the exact number, I think it's about 13 countries now.
Just out of curiosity, as someone who grew up in not too far from Kuwait in Dubai, how did the product end up there? Do you have any insight into that?
Like a lot of our clients, they found us on the web and then realized the value of what we're offering. They were, so this is the Kuwait, the elite swim team over in Kuwait.
Wow.
They've been a client of ours now for several years.
Okay, because usually when you think of Kuwait, you think of bodybuilding, so that's pretty interesting to... It's a good thing to see that, it's obviously there's an interest in the sport and your product so far away from here. Now, I guess coming to that second question that I initially asked, who are your main competitors in the market? And you've touched on the uniqueness of your product. Maybe if you could give us a bit more, only if you're okay with naming anybody, otherwise you can just tell us a bit about how you think, your product is superior to a lot of the other products out there. I know that you've touched on it, but maybe a bit more in detail.
Yeah, sure. Our main competitor would really be Colorado Timing Systems. So their Dolphin system is the one which is used by most of the clubs that have got an automated timing system, at least in Australia, and it's heavy use over in the US as well.
Yep.
The nice thing about it is that it's a wireless system, and I liked that. I thought that was great. But what's not so nice about it is that it's all proprietary hardware.
Of course, yep.
And the markup on it is exceptional, and the technology is old. And from a software engineering point of view, I sort of looked at it and was a little bit horrified that it was still being used, this side of the turn of the century. And I knew we could do better, and we could do better at a fraction of the cost. So when we're selling, that's the system that we're always compared to. Often we get a lot of a surprise when they find out, not only the feature set that we offer in comparison to the Dolphin feature set, but also how much more affordable we are.
Sure. And I'm assuming that they're a lot older than you guys in terms of the technology that they've developed or when they formed or started. Is that right of me to think?
Yeah, they've been around since 1971. So
okay, yeah.
It just looks like the technology hasn't changed since then.
Right. And when did you guys launch? I never asked you that.
So I came up with the idea in 2012, 2013, but we formed the company in 2015. Once we sort of realised that there was something here that we're already getting other clubs sort of asking about it. So at that, I sort of needed to make a decision about whether I was just going to hand it away to someone and let them take it over or turn it into a business.
Right. So that's quite the story. Under 5 years, and you're now selling the technology in 13 different countries. I guess my next question has to do with the industry of sports tech in Australia and how you found your journey within that industry. Do you think that it's difficult, easy to sort of grow? What are, Australia being one of the premier sporting locations of the world, do you think that your business has gained an advantage from that, or have there been several hurdles?
I think Australia is very privileged in a number of respects. One, you're right, we're a sporting nation and we're known as a sporting nation, but we're also a nation of risk takers and early adopters. Australians are more likely to jump on, try something, and give it a go. And if it works, then they're really happy, and they'll try and make it work as well as they can, which is great. And that's been really, really helpful. And on top of that, the amount of energy in the startup scene, particularly here in Brisbane, is phenomenal. I have really enjoyed sort of being part of that, and had help from other entrepreneurs in the sports tech startup space, who have are a couple of years down the track, further ahead than where we are, and have been really helpful with advice and helping out where they can.
Right. Okay. So it is quite a bit of a community where it's not just competitiveness, but people are more than happy and willing to support one another.
In fact, I think there's more camaraderie than there is competitiveness. It's really good to see. We're not directly, most of us aren't directly competing with each other, but there's areas that we can all move into and sort of claim market over each other. But it's much more about, well, you're in a better position to do this than me, and I've got other fish to fry. So why don't I help you with this, and then you can come back and help me with something else later on. Right.
That's very refreshing to hear, actually. I often come across startup owners in Australia who say, we've reached a plateau, our business, our startup isn't growing anymore, we're thinking of relocating to the States. Is it the same case in your personal experience? And is that the case with the sports tech startup scene in Australia or not?
I don't see the need to do that. Definitely not for us.
Yeah.
I've been involved in a startup before where all of the engineering team was here in Australia, and all of the sales team was in the US. And that was great because, what engineer wants to really have to deal with a salesman day to day? They don't. You get the Pacific in between you, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But the world market, you can chase it from anywhere today.
Sure. Yeah.
You don't, you can, if you need to have salespeople on the ground in certain jurisdictions, then you can go and do that. Right. But that doesn't mean that you need to move, your whole operations offshore. It would require something really significant, in my opinion, in order to make that happen. Some huge, incentive, to want to drag a company, lock, stock, and barrel somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because you can do it here. There's no reason why you couldn't, and wouldn't do it.
Sure. Yeah. You've touched quite a bit on, the successes and the joys that have come out of launching Wylas Timing and the work that you do. Can you tell me a bit about the challenges that you faced as a leader in your organization and in the industry and how you overcame them?
God, that's a hard question.
Any challenge that, you've come across and gone, oh man, I'm so glad that, I was able to jump over that hurdle. Like, that was tough, but I've done it and I've grown from it. Maybe something like that.
Yeah, so there's a few that I could throw in that area. As I've mentioned, probably ad nauseum so far, I'm a software engineer and not a salesman.
Yep.
So starting up a company where you actually need to sell something in order to turn a profit, I came into this with the most naive worldview that I would build it and they would come.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can build really good product. I've done it for so many years now, it's not funny. But funnily enough, even if you build the best product in the world, if they don't know about it and you can't get it into their hands at a price that is value for them, you may as well not have a product at all. So I've had to learn how to suck it up and sell. And I've been able to do that by bringing on good people around me who have been able to mentor me on the way through about what I need to do to adjust personality and way that I present in order to make that happen. And that's been a huge change for me. Like, I had a very, very healthy disrespect for salesmen before this, and I've come to appreciate that maybe some of them, should be thrown under a bus, but some of them actually, have value in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I won't touch on any specific industry salespeople, but I'm sure the listeners catch your drift. I guess another thing from that perspective that comes to mind is, what would you say to new startup owners, people considering building a startup in the sports tech space, even perhaps to young startups and organizations like our one, which is Sportageous? We've only launched a few months ago, and we're still finding our ropes around things. What sort of advice would you give?
The number one bit of advice, and that kind of follows on from what we're just talking about, and you're doing it right because you're a co-founder, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Don't solo found.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll bring you'll wear the weight of the world on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to wear all of the hats until you can get enough revenue to get people in to be able to do some of those roles for you.
Right.
Go and find a co-founder who does this, who enjoys and is good at doing the things that you're not good at and you don't enjoy doing.
So that's the biggest piece of advice you'd give to anyone. Don't go at it alone.
Don't go at it alone. Find someone who can complement you, who can do the things that you can't, and loves doing them.
Would you like to share who you work with and what you found in that person?
Yeah, so I'm a solo founder. So this is why I'm offering this advice. If I were to do this all over again,
yeah,
I wouldn't solo found. I would spend the in my case, I would have spent the time at the beginning finding someone who would be the salesperson in our in our company and our relationship, and let them run with that, so that I could devote myself to the product, the logistics, that side of things.
Right.
And I would have we'd probably be a lot further down the track than where we are now, and I probably would have slept a lot more over the last 5 years.
Right. But you do often find people who go, nah, mate, I'm just not keen on kicking this thing off with anyone else. It's my baby, and I want to do it alone. What would you say to them?
Well, you can do it. Like, people have. I've managed to bring Wylas through, at least as far as we've got now. But you're probably hurting yourself doing it. It's kind of the same story as when you're looking for investment.
Yeah.
Handing off part of your company for cash and for mentorship from your investors,
right,
it is a hard thing to do, and you're giving up part of your baby, for the extra acceleration that you can get from getting those extra resources. And it's the same kind of thing, bringing in a co-founder who can run with it. Like if I had someone running with the sales, early on who just loved that, right?
Yeah.
Like a pig in mud, then the same way that I love software and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That would have been worthwhile giving up a good chunk of my company for, right?
Right.
So
okay. Yeah, sure.
Next time I do it, that's the way I'm going to be doing it.
That's it's good to know that we're sort of on the right track then ourselves, and I'm sure a lot of listeners would be happy to hear that as well. Just a couple of more questions before I let you go. One thing that I did want to ask is, as a solo founder, and as you've just touched on it, you can get extremely busy. What do you get up to when you're not working on Wylas Timing?
I'm still not 100% Wylas Timing. So I'm currently still working 4 days a week for a large multinational aerospace company.
Wow. Okay. Yep.
As a software engineer for them, and supposedly 1 day a week for Wylas, but it's really 50 or 60 hours a week for Wylas.
What do you get up to when you're not doing either?
Well, when I'm not playing with my granddaughter.
Wow. Okay.
I've got a 2.5-year-old granddaughter, and she, having kids was great. I loved it when our kids were little, particularly. That was the most fun time.
Yeah.
Having a granddaughter at that age is like, sugar on top. It's fantastic.
Right. Okay. Well, it's good I guess it's also good to get some of that downtime with the family. I think it's crucial in allowing you to do everything else that you do, having that downtime. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. You need to enjoy what, you have on the way through.
Yep.
One of the nice things about Wylas is that I'm spending a lot of time doing things that I enjoy doing. So it's not, while it can be tiring, it's fun.
Yeah, and I guess that should be the core of anyone going into any startup, let alone in the sports tech industry.
Absolutely. If you're not enjoying it, then, it's probably the wrong choice.
And just one last question. What is on the horizons for Wylas? What have you got coming up? What are you looking to do in terms of the business? Anything you want to share that might be exciting or anything in general?
Yeah, we've got the first 3 installs of our wireless touchpads coming up over the next month.
Yep.
So that's 2 here in Queensland and then Leeds University over in the UK.
Yeah, okay.
So that's going to be fun. I haven't been to the UK before, so I'll fly over there and make sure that it's all set up correctly.
Yeah.
And then coming into next year, we're looking for some funding at the moment.
Uh-huh.
But we're getting to the point now where the revenue is, may mean that we don't actually need the funding, which is a really nice place to be in.
Oh, wow. Okay, right. So a couple of key things about to happen. I'm sure you're going to have fun in the weather in Leeds after the nice heat, in the lovely heat of the Sunshine State. Nothing gets better than that, and to go from that to Leeds, well, I guess it's for a good purpose, so that makes up for it. Well, look, thanks a lot, William. Absolute pleasure talking to you, and thanks for being on the show. I look forward to hearing about where Wylas is down the line, perhaps over another podcast or something in the future.
I'd love that. Thanks very much, Zushan.
Yeah, have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Sportageous podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.